Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamanatira Vanachari. Yamanatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavidikacharya Ashtotoda Sri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavidikacharya Ashtotoda Sri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Śrīmad-Bhāgavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, give me a second here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I get verse 2. Okay. So you have your own book. Is it a hardback? Softback. Huh? All right. We're going to be on 18th chapter. Yeah, then we can. You have the right page nation. Page 662. Okay. 17. On the 17th day of February 2026 in San Diego, we're reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace HG Dravida Dasa. And we have just begun chapter 18, the final chapter, and it's entitled Conclusion, the Perfection of Renunciation. And we're on text number 2. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu Sarva Karma Bhalatyagam Prahus Tyagam Vichakshanaha. I'm sorry, okay. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu Sarva Karma Palatyagam Prahustyagam Vichakshanaha. Okay, it's aha. Vichakshanaha. Okay. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Okay. Page 662. 662. And for you? 662. Okay. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu Sarva Karma Palatyagam Prahustyagam Vichakshanaha. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu Sarva Karma Palatyagam Prahustyagam Vichakshanaha. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu Sarva Karma Palatyagam Prahustyagam Vichakshanaha. Go ahead, Mohini. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu Sarva Karma Palatyagam Prahustyagam Vichakshanaha. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu Sarva Karma Palatyagam Prahustyagam Vichakshanaha. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu Sarva Karma Palatyagam Prahustyagam Vichakshanaha. Anyone online?
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam
Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam
Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu
Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu
Sarva Karma Palatyagam
Sarva Karma Palatyagam
Prahustyagam Vichakshanaha.
Prahustyagam Vichakshanaha. Word by word. Shri Bhagavan Vacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, Kamyanam, with desire, karmanam, of activities, nyasam, renunciation. Sannyasam, the renounced order of life, Kaviyaha, the learned, Viduhu, know, Sarva, of all karma activities, Phala, of results, Tyagam, renunciation. Prahuhu, call, Tyagam, renunciation, Vichakshanaha, the experienced. Translation: the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the giving up of activities that are based on material desire is what great learned men call the renounced order of life, sannyas. And giving up the results of all activities is what the wise call renunciation. Purport: the performance of activities for results has to be given up. This is the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita. But activities leading to advanced spiritual knowledge are not to be given up. This will be made clear in the next verses. In the Vedic literature, there are many prescriptions of methods for performing sacrifice for some particular purpose. There are certain sacrifices to perform to attain a good son or to attain elevation to the higher planets. But sacrifices prompted by desires, material desires, should be stopped. However, sacrifice for the purification of one's heart or for advancement in the spiritual science should not be given up. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, the first question Arjuna asked is, Almighty Armed One, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, tyaga, and of the renounced order of life, sannyas, O killer of the Keshi demon, master of the senses. So, Krishna is answering that question succinctly. And we come back to the essential question in the practice of yoga, or bhakti yoga, and that is the motive. It really doesn't make sense to say we're giving up unmotivated work, because motive simply means why you do something. And that can just as easily be a spiritual motive as a material motive. We want to give up the material motives. And that's what the first definition was. Giving up activities that are based on material desire, material motive, is what great learned men call the renounced order of life, sannyas. So even if you're not in renounced order of life, but you want to advance in devotional service, this giving up of activities based on material desire has to be embraced. Well, what desire is it going to be based on? Because otherwise, if there's no motive, you won't do anything. So the desire is to please Krishna. That's the the ultimate motive. And why is that? Why is that so important? Because this is our original nature. Is that we're part and parcel of Krishna. They probably would always use this phrase. And the analogy is the parts of the body. Like this hand is part and parcel of my body, meaning that it's very much integrated into the body. And what is the function of the hand? Well, to do what I want. If I want to, I have to look at my watch. Well, I say, I don't say, "Oh, hand, will you please grab that watch?" No, it's not that formal. But the point is, the impetus goes out. The hand grabs the watch, the clock, and you press the right buttons, hopefully, and get the result. So we're like Krishna's hands. Remember that the name Rishikesh has been used for Krishna quite a bit in this Bhagavad Gita. I think the last chapter. Rishika is a word in Sanskrit, one of the words that means senses. And Isha is the Lord. So Lord Krishna is Rishikesha. He's the Lord or the master of all the senses, including our senses. These are actually his senses, in one sense. Sorry. I couldn't read. That was involuntary. And meaning that this hand is properly situated when it's being used for some purpose for Krishna. Now I say, okay, I just pressed a button on this watch or on this iPod, and this was for recording the class, and this was for checking the time. But it was all in the general context of moving the class along, and recording it for someone who might want to possibly hear it in the future. So therefore, the hand is properly situated in that way. But if I'm, using my hand to press the button on the TV to watch something, then the hand is no longer serving Krishna's purpose. It's not properly situated. So this is the one of the basic principles of Krishna consciousness, and that's why we learn early on in the Bhagavad Gita. I always think of chapter 3, the end of that chapter. The Arjuna asks the question, what is it that seems to push us to do things that we may even know are bad for us? And what's the answer? Who can say? Come on. Kamesha, Krodesha, Rajogana Samudbhava. Mahashano Mahapapma Vidyanam Ihabaidinam. Now this is very important. The first part is Kama. Now Kama, this doesn't mean sex desire. It's come to mean that popularly Kama Sutra. But it means any powerful desire that really moves you. And when frustrated, become angry. So Kamesha, Krodesha. So these two elements, which are a result of like what we call the mode of passion, and Krodha actually is a mode of ignorance, are the eternal enemy. In other words, he's saying not those masked soldiers on the other side, Arjuna. Your real enemy is in here. Is your desire for all kinds of gratification of your senses or your mind. The mind is known as the sixth sense. That's another big gratifying agent. And self-centered rather than Krishna-centered. See? So the whole process of bhakti yoga is in purifying the desire, so that we're motivated not by sense gratification, as I said, but by desires to please Krishna's senses. Now that somebody says, "Well, that sounds like come on, that's like slavery." And what about me? But we learn from the Vedanta Sutra that we're part and parcel of Krishna, meaning that he is eternally happy. He is eternally self-satisfied, you see. And you can ask, well, if you were God, wouldn't you do that if you had the power to create any situation? Why would you think, well, I think I'll mix a little misery and fear and anxiety into, that'll make it interesting. No. Whatever he does, whether it's killing the demons or calling the gopis or, running from his mother, pretending to be afraid, right? And acting afraid. It's all part of the mix of different varieties of loving exchange with his devotees, which is what really gives him the most pleasure. He says, there's a wonderful passage in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 4 of the Adi Lila. It's a very important chapter. It's describing Lord Chaitanya's, or Krishna's internal reason for coming as Lord Chaitanya. He has the external reason, which is to spread Krishna consciousness and save the fallen souls. But he also has his own reasons. That he wants to. It's beautiful. He's in Dwarka. He's in his palace, and this beautiful accoutrements, and the floors are beautifully polished, the walls are beautifully polished marble. So he noticed his own reflection in the one of the pillars, and he says, "Oh, that's beautiful. How beautiful it is. I would like to appreciate that beauty from Radharani's point of view, because she really, can appreciate it more." And then he wants to also appreciate the love that she feels for him, which he sees she gets so much pleasure from. And he wants to appreciate his own beauty and glories from her point of view, seen through the lens of her unlimited love. It's very esoteric, And that's expanded upon in the 4th chapter. That verse is explained in detail. Who is this Radharani? There's a whole section of that. So a very, very nice little, one of these beautiful mantric verses describing what's the difference between lust and love. You see, Atnandriya Vritti Vancha, Dare Nam Kam, Krishnendriya Priti Icha, Dare Prem Nam. So the opposite of kama is prema. Prema is not just love, but it's love of God. And it's much deeper than any kind of material love we can imagine. Because after all, the loving exchanges on the material platform, everything is changing. The mother loves the child, but the child eventually grows up And that loving, it's still there, but it's not the same. I remember I used to visit my mother when she was, my father had died in he was 87. He was 80 and died in 1987. I was living down in Miami, and I would sometimes fly up to New York from Miami to visit her. She's living alone in the apartment I grew up in. She lived there for 50 years. And so, I would come. She's very happy to see me, and she right away, she wants to cook me something, So, okay, make me a baked potato, with butter or something like that. Okay. But the same mood is there, wanting to nourish, wanting to, like that. So, but clearly, the relationship has changed. I'm, 45 years old, whatever it was, rather than 7, and she's in her 80s. And so, and eventually, of course, she passed out of that body. So it's a temporary relationship. The same thing is there, where Krishna is relishing so much. There he's being bound up by Mother Yashoda, the wonderful Damodar Leela. There's this one devotee who was here in the 80s. He came and visited several times. His name is Pradyumna, different Pradyumna, obviously. And he was here when they opened the temple. And he pointed out to me that freeze, what do they call it, of Damodar being bound, there's a big mistake there. She's binding him up, but she's not, what is he binding him to? There's no mortar. Or grinding mortar, big grinding mortar. They forgot that part. Anyway. But the mood is there. But so Krishna, what is he doing? The painting really has it where he's, says, I'm innocent, I didn't do anything. Right? So he's acting just like a young boy like that. And invoking the motherly mood, So this is where Krishna always has pleasure. And when you read the Krishna book, the 10th canto, you see that Krishna is like a director. He's organizing things in such a way to just draw out all this variety of loving exchange from his not only his parents but his friends like that and servants. So that's the eternal world, ever fresh varieties of loving exchange with God. You see, and this is what we have a role to play there. We've lost it. We've left there because. We turned our attention toward the material world. And Prabhupada said, Krishna tried to convince us not to go, but we were very stubborn and we went anyway. So what does that mean? It means that because we learn, what the actual existence is that Krishna has different energies. God has all varieties of energies. He has spiritual energies and he has material energies. Now we're part of the spiritual energy. We're part of the internal energy, called the internal energy of Krishna. And there's unlimited living beings like us. And on this planet or in this solar system universe, there's a limited number of human beings, obviously. And but we're intrinsically not different from the soul of the dog and the cat and even the insects. We're all irreducible, microscopic living beings, irreducible particles of consciousness. You see, and we never die, and we're never born. That's right at the beginning of the Gita. Najayati mriti vakadachan. So what does that mean? It means that we've had lives before, and we'll have a life, at least one, if not more, in the future. So where does that leave us? Well, we have all this knowledge that's been handed down originally by Krishna, and given in language that we can understand, ideas that we can understand by a great devotee like Srila Prabhupada, describing how we can act as human beings, which can use our intelligence to guide our senses, not just let us be pulled around by our senses, in such a way that we can revive that original consciousness and return to the spiritual world. So the thing is, we have it. We have perfection within us, all of us. This beautiful verse from Lord Chaitanya and teacher Sanatan. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabonoi. This is Bengali language. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabonoi. Shavanadi Shuddha Chitte Karaye Udoi. Wonderful verse, very illuminating. Nitya Siddha means the eternal perfection. Now we're not in our state of eternal perfection. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema, love for Krishna. Sadhya is not something that needs to be brought in from outside. It's not anything artificial. It's already intrinsic to us, but we've forgotten it. So how do we revive it? Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte. By purifying our consciousness, beginning with hearing the holy name, and then Adi means etc. And the first etc. is chanting. Hearing, chanting, the Sankirtan of this Mahamantra. But not just the Mahamantra, also all the things that expand from it, if you will. These verses Prabhupada took so much trouble to make sure that the Devanagari is there to show the authenticity, and that the equivalent transliteration so we can learn to pronounce it. How do you pronounce it all? There's a pronunciation guide, and then the word-by-word meanings, so that we can actually chant the verses with understanding, ultimately, and experience the power of the Sanskrit, the original language which Krishna spoke. So all of this now, this is the final chapter winding up, and at the end, Krishna will give the gist of the Bhagavad Gita in 2 very important verses. We won't get to that right now. But here, he's coming back to this point, and Arjuna asked the questions, but it's the whole thing. Well, he wants to know the purpose of renunciation and of the renounced order of life, sannyas. So renunciation, what are we renouncing? Not everything. We're renouncing those things which are impediments to devotional service, and beginning with the things which are not just things, but activities, relationships, everything, which turn our attention again toward personal gratification, either gross or subtle, sense gratification or mental gratification, you say. That's what we have to renounce. And then the other thing was the renounced order of life, sannyas, right? Giving up activities based on material desire. That's called renounced order of life, sannyas. And giving up the results of all activities is what's called tyaga. So there's tyaga and there is vairagya. These are two complementary things. Tyaga means literally giving up. Just like we have our 4 regular principles. You can give up meat eating, everyone knows we're vegetarian, illicit sex, connections, all intoxications, and gambling. The hardest one is gambling. I'll explain why. But those are like the pillars of sin, and they're all based on personal desire. When you think it, it's all based on trying to gratify yourselves. So those have to be given up, tyaga. And if you practice Krishna consciousness, because it's not all negative, you have to don't do this, don't do this, but do this. Get up early, chant Hare Krishna, see the deity. You see, take nice prasadam, associate with devotees, join the festivals that we have. Periodically. It's supposed to be every day, actually. The morning program is like a little festival. So all those things are pleasing to the soul, and they cultivate vairagya. Vairagya means it's not an activity, but it's a feeling or a lack of feeling. It means those things that you used to be really into, which are tying you to this world, because the material, you get distaste for. You don't want them anymore. That's the steady platform. Not that you're gritting your teeth. No. Let me chant Hare Krishna. No, Hare Krishna. It doesn't work that way. But so the point is that the holy name, when you really get it, is so sweet that here's a prayer from the Pajavali. Pajavali is full of these wonderful verses. Rupa Goswami's own nectar file. His favorite verses, some of which he wrote, but most, what's scattered throughout the Pajavali is the Shikshastika. That's where the Shikshastika comes from. So anyway, this one verse is a prayer to become a miser. Now, one thing, we hear again, don't be miserly. Miser means someone who's so greedy, So this is a prayer to become a miser. So here's how it works. Vichayani, vichayani, vichinchani punak punaha. Kripanasya dhananiva tvannamani bhavantanaha. Compelled to constantly collect and count his precious hoard, the miser contemplates his wealth with avaricious aims. Please bless me to become a miser who's compelled, O Lord, to constantly collect and count and contemplate your names. So that greed can be turned toward Krishna. And in fact, there's another verse by Ramananda Roy, the first line of which Prabhupada turned into the phrase Krishna consciousness, and which is often quoted. About how do we actually advance toward the goal of Krishna consciousness. It says, Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitam ati kriyatam yadikato pilabhyate Tatta laulyam abimulyam ekalam janma koti sukatayana labhyate. I didn't put it into a poem. So Krishna Bhakti Rasa means the mellow, or the enjoyment of relationship with Krishna, serving him. The mind absorbed in that, you should try to, which probably translated as Krishna consciousness. You should try to buy it if you can at all, you know. So then you may think, well, what's the price? You say, you know, do I have to, you know, $10,000, $1 million maybe? No. He says, Tatra laulim abimulyam. The only price is your greed for it. In other words, the most valuable thing is the Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhagavad Gita. But in order to get it, you have to want it. You have to want it exclusively. And that's what sadhana bhakti, the practice of bhakti, the path of devotional service is meant to do. Purify our desires more and more so that ultimately that's all we want. And we wake up in the morning and say, okay, let me go to Mangalartik, let me chant Hare Krishna, let me study the bhakti, you know. Let me memorize this verse, you know. And let me somehow give Krishna consciousness to others, you know. So everything within the realm of what Krishna wants. How do we know what he wants? Ask the Guru. Prabhupada told us, you know. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita explicitly, always think of me. How do I always think of me? Well, there it is. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What could be easier? But it's so valuable. So here, Krishna is giving the definition in very succinctly. Giving up all activities based on material desires, not easy, but that's it. This is the learning called renounced order of life. So to living a renounced life. And giving up the results of all activities is what wise call renunciation. Now it doesn't say giving up all the results of activities to Krishna, but this is like an intermediary step, you know, not to cultivate desire for something, and then when you get it, you know, okay, how can I get more? You know, how can I cheat him out of it? Because there's a whole, no, the whole idea is that whatever you do get, you make sure that it's within the realm of devotional service, and you give it to Krishna. And that's very fulfilling. And that means that you're not attached to it anymore, but that you're increasing your attachment to Krishna by doing that. So that's the whole idea here. It's all within the realm of devotional service. Okay, any questions or comments? Otherwise we'll go on. Okay.
Hare Krishna. Does the word agape, is it Christians' attempt to kind of describe prema? Are you familiar with the word agape, love, like agape?
Yeah, what is it? It's Latin or Greek or something?
I can't remember the definition, but it's like it's the highest level love that Christians describe.
I've heard of the word, yeah, but don't ask me to explain it. I'm not so familiar. Yeah, there are hints of that in other religions. This whole thing, but the systematic understanding of, you know, the full manifestation of the spiritual world and activities, and, you know, everyone has a role to play and there's a form and all these lila. You won't find that anywhere else. That's the thing. All right, why don't we go on? Text 3. Tyajam doshavadityeke karma prahur manishinaha yagyadana tapakarma natyajam mitichapare. Some learned men declare that all kinds of fruitive activities should be given up as faulty. Yet other sages maintain that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be abandoned. Purport. There are many activities in the Vedic literature which are subjects of contention. For instance, it is said that an animal can be killed in a sacrifice. Yet some maintain that animal killing is completely abominable. Although animal killing in the sacrifice is recommended in the Vedic literature, the animal is not considered to be killed. The sacrifice is to give a new life to the animal. Sometimes the animal is given a new animal life after being killed in the sacrifice, and sometimes the animal is promoted immediately to the human form of life. But there are different opinions among the sages. Some say that animal killing should always be avoided, and others say that for a specific sacrifice it is good. All these different opinions on sacrificial activity are now being clarified by the Lord himself. I think that's the end of the purport, isn't it? Okay, so why don't we let him clarify it? Text 4. Nishtayam shuname tatra tyage bharata sattama tyago hi purusha vyagra trivadha samprakirtitaha. O best of the Bharatas, descendants of King Bharat, now hear my judgment about renunciation. O tiger among men, renunciation is declared in the scriptures to be of 3 kinds. Purport. Although there are differences of opinion about renunciation, here the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, gives his judgment, which should be taken as final. After all, the Vedas are different laws given by the Lord. Here the Lord is personally present, and his word should be taken as final. The Lord says that the process of renunciation should be considered in terms of the modes of material nature in which it is performed. Yagyadana tapakarma natyadyam karyameva tat yagyodhanam tapaschaiva pavanani manishinam. Acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up. They must be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance purify even the great souls. Purport. The yajnas or sacrifices are generally performed for the advancement of human society. There are many purificatory processes for advancing a human being to spiritual life. The marriage ceremony, for example, is considered to be one of these sacrifices. It is called Vivaha Yajna. Should a sannyasi who is in the renounced order of life and who has given up his family relations encourage the marriage ceremony? The Lord says here that any sacrifice which is meant for human welfare should never be given up. Vivaha Yajna, the marriage ceremony, is meant to regulate the human mind so that it may become peaceful for spiritual advancement. For most men, this Vivaha Yajna should be encouraged even by persons in the renounced order of life. Sannyasis should never associate with women, but that does not mean that one who is in the lower stages of life, a young man, should not accept a wife in the marriage ceremony. All prescribed sacrifices are meant for achieving the Supreme Lord. Therefore, in the lower stages, they should not be given up. Similarly, charity is for the purification of the heart. If charity is given to suitable persons, as described previously, it leads one to advanced spiritual life. So Prabhupada famously performed marriages for his disciples. You know, this was somewhat, I don't want to say scandalous, but looked down upon by his godbrothers and everyone in India when he started doing that. But he saw that this is necessary because his disciples were coming. Some were coming in couples, and some needed that kind of stability in their lives. So he performed it. He performed marriages. And this is usually not done by sannyasis in India. The Brahmins, there's so many Brahmins, but there's no other Brahmins. So Prabhupada did that, blessed them, and many of them, became, the wonderful example of how important it was. The first pioneer preachers in England, in the UK, were 3 couples, famous couples. Mukunda and Janaki, Shyamasundar and Malati, and not Guru Das. Yeah, Guru Das and Yamuna. Yeah. And there they were. And they did incredible work in pioneering work and, in opening up Krishna consciousness. Just to meet the Beatles and be able to, get George Harrison and to help them make, that record was huge. These are world famous personalities. And suddenly they're into Hare Krishna. Oh, I want to check that out, It was tremendous. And Prabhupada was very, very proud of them, what they did, and how they were able to get access to John Lennon's place, and then of course the manor, it's incredible. So that Prabhupada proved it by his preaching success, that you may do something that was a little out of the ordinary, but it was very important. to bring in these wonderfully qualified people and to reach out to, and to give the movement its expansion, impetus. So these three things, he's going to continue this yajna, dana, and tapa. So what is the yajna? What's the most important yajna that we can perform? Ami, you know. You don't know? Sankirtan yajna. Prabhupada often, when it comes up in the Bhagavad Gita or any of his books, he says, in this age, the only really yajna that's recommended is Sankirtan yajna. And what's the big sacrifice? Doesn't cost anything. We don't charge anything at the door. It's Sunday night, so you got to be $5 if you want to join the kirtan. No, everyone come on. We take it out. It's free. You take, the most valuable thing we're giving out. But it's still, you have to put time into it, and you have to spend a little energy. The most important part is your mind, your attention, hearing and chanting. But it's such a powerful sacrifice. If you really start doing it, I remember when I joined, I was so fortunate to join early enough so that there was still like a daily Harinam that everyone was meant to go on. You're supposed to go out for 3 hours, which I started doing. And then you come back for the evening program, and it's like everyone's fired up, And there was a song we sang, which I think, hardly anyone knows anymore. I sometimes sing the melody. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I'll sing it this time. But it was a song. Kiba Jaya, Jaya Gora Chandra. I forget the words. But it's a song meditating on Lord Chaitanya being worshipped on the bank of the Yamuna, on the bank of the Ganges, in Mayapur. And we used to sing that every night, and it was a whole different mood than Mangalartik. Mangalartik, the lights are down like we do, and it was much more meditative. But in the evening, everyone has had a whole day of service, and we get together and there's everyone dancing and chanting. And everybody is under 25 years old, so you get plenty of energy. So that was the movement in those days, it was temples. There were very little congregation, it was all if you wanted in the temples. But Prabhupada was, he was traveling everywhere, and especially if you lived in the northern hemisphere, in England or in Australia, Europe, U.S. of course. Then Prabhupada was periodically coming, and he prepare the place, he clean it up. Sometimes his paint jobs are going on. It's the whole thing. So all of that is sacrifice. You're sacrificing your time. Nobody's building up a big bank account or anything. You're sacrificing your time, your useful energy, and it was very blissful, just to be part of that energy. And so you can feel that. So these three things: sacrifice and dana, which is charity. Now, charity basically means that you're giving, whatever you have, your energy or fruits of your work, to the temple and to the spread of Krishna consciousness. That is the best charity in the world, because it's for the benefit of every living being. You have the highest benefit. And like this Marcy, I told her, ever since I think the pandemic, she's been buying books and going and giving them out. And she's probably listening right now, so she may be embarrassed, but I told her that there was a mistake on her birth certificate. It's not Marcy, it's Mercy. Your name is actually Mercy. Amazing. And she goes out and she doesn't even get anything for them. She buys it and then she gives them out, mostly small books. And it's great. I met one of her recipients on my walk, Dr. John, he was one of the homeless guys. And I usually say good morning to everyone. He said, "Oh, I met someone. I told her that because she tells him she's Hare Krishna. He says, she told Marcy that I saw one of your people coming up. He walks in. Oh yeah, I know. That's my teacher. Because she'd been coming to the class, either online or personally for 20 years. So it's wonderful. Then she's advancing. I can see how blissful she is. So this giving to Krishna, and especially trying to give Krishna to others, and that's what's so great about Harinam. You're not even asking anything back. Just giving the holy name. We used to give out mantra cards, like that. And people would sometimes they join in, you know. So that's the best charity. It's the best yajna, and it's a little bit of austerity, you know. Sometimes you get tired, you know, jumping up and down. So they're all in one. But these are not should not be given up, but they should be done in such a way that they are integrated into your Krishna consciousness. And you know, certainly tapa austerities. There's so many austerities, and it's all for the purpose of purification. This is the whole idea. You know, Lord Chaitanya directly, that Sankirtan Jagat chanting Hare Krishna Chaitodarpana Marjanam, it polishes the mirror of the mind, the heart. And the others are the same thing. Certainly you can see, you know, you got your $100 or something, you know, and you throw it into the hundi, and how purifying it is. Oh, you know, that's going to Krishna's service, you know, and maybe, you know, the next big feast they have, that'll be part of it, you know. I remember when I first joined, I had a little bank account because I'd worked in this hospital for a couple of years. So I think it was $1,700, maybe it was 13, I forget, but it was a lot back in 1973 compared to maybe 10 times more than it is today. And then I learned much later that a lot of the money that they were collecting for getting a place in Manhattan. They had this Brooklyn temple, you know. So I don't know how much they had accumulated, but to aspire to get a place in Manhattan, it requires a lot of money. But then they got a call from Prabhupada to tell them to give him all the money because they're going to buy the land in Bombay. And so they did. They just sent it all to Prabhupada. And so I realized, whoa, that $1,700 helped to get the land in Bombay. It's in there, you know, in the account. So that's the best use of the dana. And of course, austerities, we know, getting up early, there's so many things. But once you're in the habit of doing it, you know, it's no longer, I always tell the story of the first cold shower I took. I won't tell it again, you know. But that was an austerity. In March, in New York, it's pretty cold. In here it's been cold in February. But after a while I said, oh, I can do it. You know, take a cold shower, 5-second shower, maybe 10 seconds. And you feel how purifying it is. So all of these things are important for Krishna consciousness. All right, one more and then we'll do a few poems. Text 6. Etan apitu karmani sangam tyakva palanicha kartavyani me parta nishchitam matamuttamam. All these activities should be performed without attachment or any expectation of result. They should be performed as a matter of duty, O son of Pritha. That is my final opinion. Purport: although all sacrifices are purifying, one should not expect any result by such performances. In other words, all sacrifices which are meant for material advancement in life should be given up, but sacrifices that purify one's existence and elevate one to the spiritual plane should not be stopped. Everything that leads to Krishna consciousness must be encouraged. In the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam also it is said that any activity which leads to devotional service to the Lord should be accepted. That is the highest criterion of religion. A devotee of the Lord should accept any kind of work, sacrifice, or charity which will help him in the discharge of devotional service to the Lord. That's probably the end of that purport. Yeah. So that's the criterion. You know, it's not that it's unmotivated. That's a little misnomer. You won't do anything if you're unmotivated. You just sit there. But of course you're going to do something, you know. So the question is, what's the quality of the motivation? Is it a material motivation or is it a spiritual motivation? You know, even taking prasadam, he said, okay, I'm going to, take this prasadam, honor the prasadam, realize it's a sacrament, and it's going to give me strength to perform service to Krishna. So that's my motive for eating, not just to enjoy. Yes, it's very enjoyable. Krishna's so kind, he's giving us this nice prasadam. But that can be applied ultimately to every breath you take. There's one verse, I'm not forgetting the sloka, but basically it says, whatever you do, you should feel, I'm doing this as an offering to Narayan. Narayanayeti samarpayetat. Yeah. And that's really how the pure devotees live. Every moment is an act of service to Krishna. You could see in how Prabhupada picks up the phone It's not just like grabbing the phone, So, everything is graceful, and it's all part of the whole dance of devotional service. So that's really, and you can see how wonderful it is if you feel that every breath you take is an act of service to Krishna. Looks like these pujaris, it's such an incredible. Just like I can't imagine how, wonderful it is, and to be on the altar and to be dressing Krishna and put it just this way. It says, "Is this the way you want it, Krishna?" Like that. I mean, I don't know, but it's such a meditation, and you can see how advanced they are. But that can be there for all the services. Everything we do, you're sweeping the floor or something, you're doing it, making it nice for Krishna. So guests will be, enlivened when they come. So in that way, your whole life is part of the whole play of Krishna Lila that you're doing, the act of love. All right, I left enough time for one or two shlokas. And let's see, I keep repeating myself. What was I going to? Oh yeah, this said I don't have a poem, but I'm going to share it anyway. Such a nice verse. You've heard it before. You can hear the Sanskrit poetry. Rhyming at the beginning and the end of each line, very difficult. Renu I really have to put that in the poem. So Denu Vrindam means all the cows. It means the herds of cows. Anumandamayantam. Krishna is walking very leisurely behind. He's coming home. He's bringing the cows out from the pasture back into the village, to their barn, whatever they got. So that's what he's doing. And what's he doing when he's doing it? Naturally, he's playing the flute. Venugitam mamatam visvajantam. He's creating this nectarian song with the flute as he walks. Venugitam. So you got Denu Vrindam Anumandamayantam, Venugitam mamatam visvajantam. Creating this beautiful. And what's happening is all this dust is coming up, this wonderful brudge, right? Rudge means dust, and brudge is brudge, so the dust of brudge is being kicked up by thousands of cows, and it's beautifully powdering his hair, see, curly hair. And so you got Denu, Venu, then Renu. Renu is dust, right? Renu, Denu Vrindamanamanamayantam, Venu Gita Mamatam Visvajantam. Renu Rushita. Rushita means powdering, Renu Chalalakabantam, his curly locks which are moving back and forth as he leisurely walks, you see. Chalalakabantam. Kenu, who indeed? Kenu Viksha Samayurnama, seeing this sight, would not enter the state of the highest bliss. Mood is a word for joy, and anta means the end, would not attain the end of joy by just seeing this. Now the wonderful thing is, as you can experience if you just read a novel, when you read a good author, you get the picture in your mind, and everything, right? So similarly, if you chant this verse, then you'll get the picture in your mind. You're seeing the thing in your mind. You're seeing this sight, especially if you chant it like 10 times. So I'll give you this verse if you want it, and I'm going to try. I promise. I don't know if I'll do it tomorrow, but I'll try to put it into a nice little poem. It certainly is worthy of that. All right, we've run out of time. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you for coming.